Hey everyone, it's your Solid Coach, and today we'll be doing part F, procedure and setup diagrams. Now, first we're going to be looking at procedure and then setup diagrams to show you how exactly you should do this to get max points. So looking at procedure, it is important to use transitions. So we need to have it as specific as possible and to make it make sense. So we're going to be using first, then, next, lastly, also, and so many more transitions so that everything fits perfectly into a big numerical format. Next, it needs to be a logical sequence where they can be recreated, the steps. So this means that even though you're writing everything down, it needs to make sense on where you should be repeating your steps. So in some experience, you may have different materials. So you need to explicitly say that these are materials in our experiment, and instead you should be recreating these steps in specific. So as is shown on the right, I said repeat step 2 for the plane, the construction, and the cardstock papers, as in making sure that these papers are done for all. So someone might have different types of papers, and it would make sense to them because of step 3, so that you should be doing this for all your papers. Next, number 3, have it in sections for repeated steps. So sometimes what I like to do is that if it's a very long format and there's many steps, it's important that we use certain sections. Like we may put a box saying repeat this part so that it's easy to read and that it can actually stand out. Last, make sure you have cleaning up as your last step. And I understand that sometimes you forget about it and stuff, but having that cleaning up as your last step will make sure that not only you guys remember to clean it up, but your event supervisors know that you clean up your area. Now let's go to set up diagrams. So for setting up diagrams, you need to make sure that everything is labeled along with your procedures. So I'll show you this on the next slide on how you should be drawing these, but you need to make sure that every last thing is labeled so that you don't miss any points. Next, you may need to have multiple diagrams in different sketches, but it's really important to have one easy to read and a really fast learning diagram so that you don't make any more mistakes, right? And if you do more than one, then you need to label all of them, and it takes a lot more time out of something that you shouldn't be putting time into. Next, you need to have different methods to sketch. Now, there's going to be different types of methods where you can have like a box format or a cartoon format, or maybe you have everything in one big square, right? But you don't have too much space, so you need to understand that you need to do the best you can with the space you have. And lastly, it doesn't need to be too detailed. Like, you're not going to be Picasso, right? We don't need to draw that well. It's just going to be how well you can draw it. But the most important thing is to be doing your procedure. Your diagrams must be labeled and enough to be repeated accurately as shown on this rubric, but your procedure is the most important part. So looking at this, I can have, and this is the format that I used to draw it, and this is showing how my experiment may or may not go, right? So in the first box, you can see that I put step 1 as folding the certain airplane, right? In step 2, I showed that I'm throwing that airplane, I'm calculating the time, and I'm measuring how far the distance went. And then in step 3, you can see that there's a different texture on the airplane and different lines to show that this is going to be a different plane that I'm using. It's not going to be the same one as before, right? And I'm going to do the same thing as the last time. I'm going to have to record the time, and I'm going to have to record the distance. And then lastly, step 4, I'm showing that everything's cleaned up. Me and my partners have all of our stuff away, and it's all in a clean environment. So I just want to show how my format in drawing procedure instead of diagrams is that I put the step in the top left, and I show clearly how my like how everything changes, like how the plane may change and so on, right? So this is my way on drawing set of diagrams, and even though I showed that the plane is going farther than what it should be, like even though my hypothesis is stating that different types of paper will make it go farther or shorter, right? Even though I'm saying that it's okay to be drawing it like this, draw it however you want, because this isn't trying to follow what your hypothesis is. It's just going to follow what you may think will happen, which doesn't need to always go with the hypothesis. You may reject your hypothesis and show, like in step 3, that may be construction paper, right? And that may be going the farthest with the most amount of time, and it rejects our hypothesis, which is okay as long as you're specifically labeling what's going on. So that's going to be it for the procedure and setup diagrams. And then next we're going to be going to part G. Thank you for listening.